All right, so if everybody wants to join the retro,
Can you put the link on Slack?
yes.
Yeah, we still, I guess, sort of need some way to like organize the retros on the retro page. It's like really hard to find the most recent one.
All right, has everybody put some things on the board?
Yep, I did. And then I pressed on done, so you can see that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can up here.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we're just waiting on Mike and Jose.
I assume the blue one is because you're the whatchamacallit, the retro owner.
Yeah, I don't have a done
Yeah.
button, so I guess I'm
Yeah,
done
because
when I press the button.
you just be telling yourself that you're done, basically. There were too many buttons on screen.
Fair enough.
All right. All right. So everybody's listed themselves as done. We'll go to grouping. And I went backwards.
I don't know why it didn't work for you. Just refresh. It should work. Jeff's
There we
working
go.
on rewriting Event API, which will help with some of this stuff.
Let's do it together. Is there anything else that we should group together? Everything
Not that I can see.
looks pretty fine. Okay. Move on to voting. All right, everybody went green. And advance to discussion. All right. So, what do we want to talk about? Billing.
Well, it's exciting.
It is.
It was a lot of hard work to get there, so it feels good that once we finished it, a customer actually used it and paid us money.
That's perfect. Is there a lot more work that needs to be done for it, or is it in a pretty good place?
It's at a pretty good place. We're kind of rethinking a couple things, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit more work on it today. I had another card about some of that stuff, so we can talk more about it then. Let's keep this one about the positives.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, next one. We could use some documentation around the way the data model works. Who wants to talk about that one?
Oh yeah, that's me. That was mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a problem with the sprint risk thing, and I guess maybe it was a separate problem that like it was broken for a long time and nobody noticed.
Mhm.
So John was helping me, and so I guess what was happening is that we'd switched the sprint risk to using the ref IDs instead of user IDs, and forgot to change the data model. And so it was doing some lookup against the user table against the ref IDs, which are source system IDs, right? And so of course it didn't work. But like ostensibly that should be an easy fix. Like, oh, okay, just tell it it's which IDs to use, right?
Right.
But I don't know why it's not that simple of a fix. Somehow it's like super different, and like you got to jump through all these hoops, and it like hydrates all this weird stuff, and like I don't understand how it's working and why it's not easy, and yeah, I don't like get how like what it's actually doing now. Ostensibly it's fixed. John and I saw like John and Chris Foley were like still going at it for the weekend, I guess, but I don't know. It's confusing, and I don't know where to like look up to find any more information.
Yeah. So that actually sounds more like sort of confusion around Graph API and the resolvers rather than necessarily data model.
That could be it. I sort of lumped the two together because Graph API is the only way I interact with the data model.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Graph API in general is a little confusing, and I'm not sure of a good way to like sort of document all of that aside from, documentation as like code by just going into the Graph API like little front end thing that they have.
Yeah. I mean the Graph API Explorer or whatever. Like I use that a fair amount, but what it doesn't help with is this like weird stuff where like, oh, the user is like hydrated on the thing or whatever. It's like the resolvers do weird and unexpected things, and I like can't figure out like a lot of times like, hey, I've got this thing, I'm doing a query, writing a query in Graph API. I'm like, okay, let me set a query against, I don't know, like something like .epoch or whatever. Like I think the .epochs all work, but like, I want to like go nesting into something to make some queries and stuff, and it just like doesn't like work.
Yeah.
And I can't like I don't know how to find which ones will work and which ones won't work. And they don't like give you an obvious like error if you're trying to do one that doesn't work. It just doesn't return any results, or it'll return results that don't match what you're actually asking for.
Right. Yeah, there is a bit of tribal knowledge around Graph API and our resolvers. Well, do you have any sort of ideas on how we could do this better?
I mean, I get that part of the problem is that it's changing so quickly these days that like if you were to write anything down, it'd be wrong by the time you went back to look at it.
I mean, that's all documentation, right? Like,
yeah,
if you don't automatically generate documentation, then by the time you write your documentation, it's out of date.
Yeah, I guess that is true for all documentation. But there's got to be a way we could like, write down where to look for things, right? Like there's going to be some documentation about the structure of the code or like where the resolvers are? Because like right now, even if it's like, okay, I'm gonna go learn JavaScript or TypeScript and like read into the resolvers and actually see what they do. Like I don't know where to find them or where like how they're organized or how to like how they like output results, and like just the structure of it could which is probably more stable, could probably use some documentation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's think about that and see if we can sort of come up with any solutions. Because I can't really come up with any off my head or at the top of my head, but maybe we can sort of think of some things after we put some brain power to it.
All right.
Here, I'll put that as an action item. Oh, these are old. Add. There we go. All right. So
I added this one.
Yeah.
This was kind of the other half of what I was talking about for billing. Like I don't want to discount that we've gotten a lot better at this, and it's definitely reduced a lot of stress and made things a lot easier. We still had a bit of a problem with some of the billing requirements where Chris and I were done and ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden we had a few hours of work to do really late at night on Friday because some of the requirements weren't outlined in the tickets. And so when we went to actually roll it out with Scott, he was like, oh, like this customer needs to be able to purchase 65 seats up front. And we were like, well, crap, we don't support that because that wasn't ever captured in any of the original descriptions of what we were doing.
Right.
So I think, we still have a little bit of kinks to smooth out, like with how we set up these criteria, but it is a lot better than it has been in terms of like knowing what needs to be done well ahead of time and having time to do it.
So what sort of improvements have you seen already in terms of like what's working and what was not working in terms of requirements for features and stuff like that?
Well, it was really good that we knew, 2 weeks out, we're like, hey, like by the 1st, we want to have this new billing done because it took pretty much the full 2 weeks to get it all working. So that was good. Any shorter notice than that, we would have been a real scramble to get it ready. I think where the problem comes from is that Chris and I ended up writing most of the tickets for the billing, because we basically got like an epic with like the description of like, yeah, we want this to be the pricing, and that was it. So it was up to us to sort of create like all the tasks and the tickets, and so because we were the ones creating them, it sort of made it conform to what we understood how it was rather than what like Scott and Matt Tibbet had in their head of how it was actually supposed to work.
Right. Okay. So, so I know we don't want to totally go like a full waterfall design process, right?
Definitely
like 2 weeks ago, all the immutable requirements were laid out and tickets and whatnot. So maybe so I guess like really what would help in this situation would be to just sort of have some touch points with those stakeholders and just make sure that, as you're working on things, right, that everybody sort of understands like what is in scope and what is out of scope. So it doesn't have to be like a totally heavy process, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a little bit of back and forth on that would have been helpful, but overall it felt pretty clear, and I think we got pretty much everything how it was supposed to be except for that one little additional feature.
Okay, so as we work on the dev profiles, which are coming up for us, let's make sure we sort of make sure that we're communicating back to Scott and Tibbet in terms of what we're doing and sort of where we're thinking of things and where we're going with it. Let's see if that helps.
I agree. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. Anything else you want to talk about with this?
Nope.
Does anybody else have any other thoughts? All right. What went well? we got some monitoring things going for Rabbit and our dashboards, and being able to look into sort of the health of activity scoring and Rabbit has been really helpful when it comes to figuring out why activity scoring like isn't scoring something, for example. And no sooner had I made this dashboard that sort of activity scoring on Edge went down for whatever reason, and I was able to pretty quickly figure out what was going on with it and why. This is something that I should be able to expand to all of our other services and hopefully increase our visibility into those services by a lot, and then alert off of them. I know, yeah. So that's what sort of went well for me this week. Does anybody have any thoughts on this or questions?
I think it's awesome. We're monitoring less problems.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Or at least you just know about the problems earlier.
Yep.
Yep. So one of the things that I really have to figure out how to monitor off of is Sentry, because that really should help us understand like our response times and our load times. So if anybody has any experience with Sentry and has a good idea of what we would want to monitor or what we would want to alert off of, that would be awesome. Yeah, all right, so we can move on unless anybody has any other questions about this. Cool. So we have a plan to significantly reduce AWS costs. I'm assuming this is Mike.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah,
You want to
volume
talk about
sizes. Yeah, so doing a little audit of our costs, and we're coming up on the end of our AWS credit allotment for the year. Our volumes, each volume that's tied to an agent uses about 200 gigs of provisioned storage, which means that we're paying for 200 gigs whether or not we fill the volume or not. And I think this predates me, but this is a configuration I think was just made as sort of a holdover, sort of a patch until we could kind of figure out exactly how much storage we would need. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be 200 gigs per customer. At least I hope not. But if we can just slash these volume sizes and reprovision them to use just less, even like 50 gigs, we'd significantly slash our AWS costs. Because right now, I think about half the bill is just storage. So that's something we can control fairly easily if we have enough information to go on. So I don't know if you guys know what kind of data our customers use. Andrew, I know you said you were thinking about writing a script, maybe.
Yeah, I can write a real quick script. I already sort of shelled into like a random pod for the agent and found that we use about a half a gig for that random agent. So
Okay.
200 is a bit much.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that one of the biggest things would be the ability to sort of set different sizes between edge and stable. Because a lot of our edge ones are very transient, like test customers that we provision and then don't use ever again. So maybe there's also a solution there to figure out a way to like automatically clean up something like that. I know like Agent 4 wouldn't necessarily have the same issues. So, hopefully when that comes out, we lower our costs just because we've totally changed how our architecture.
Yeah, I mean when the agents are destroyed, they should take their volumes with them, right?
Yeah, well, so I guess kind of the thing is there's a lot of edge customers that have an agent running, but we're not really doing anything with, right? Like if I were to look into right now, we have 33 agents running on Edge, all taking up a 200 gigabyte EBS volume, right? And I can't imagine that, like we have our main Edge customer, but that means there's 32 other ones that, probably are not being used at all.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And that's low hanging fruit for us. So yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
my assumption was that it was only maybe a few gigs tops, right? And even if we capped it at 10, right, which I think would be more than enough, or at least what customers are using Pinpoint for right now, right? We'd save so much money. So
yeah, I mean, having a script that like we can go through and sort of figure out exactly how much everybody's using and base our decision off of that.
Yeah, I mean, that also raises the question of, if we do set, lower sizes, do we have to cap customers? Say, you only get 50 gigs or 100, 10 gigs, whatever it is, and then, they've got to pay for more, or I don't know, they've got to go through a process to provision more.
Well, we could talk to Scott about that.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think this is an issue once Agent 4 comes out. Because it's not using persistent volumes. It's not provisioning an agent per customer, right? So it's not storing anything on those volumes.
Mm-hmm.
So, sort of the paradigm is totally going to shift anyway. But this will save us some money over the next couple of weeks, at the very least.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is not an insignificant amount of money. I just wish we kind of did this earlier.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about? Some other AWS cost things is I have a plan to hook Kita up to Event API pipeline and Graph API. So those should be able to scale automatically, and we'll be able to scale up and down our number of Kubernetes nodes based on actual usage and not based on just what we think we need to use, which is kind of where we're at now. Cool.
Sweet.
What went well? New customer sign-up flow reduces confusion a lot. I'm assuming this is Keegan as well.
Yeah, so this is going to be rolling out today, but it's for all the deduplication of these customers where people keep signing up multiple times, getting confused. We have a lot more messaging around helping them join existing accounts rather than always creating new customers. So that'll be really nice once it's rolled out.
Yeah, I saw the flow. The flow, I think, makes a lot of sense. So that'll be good. Anything else we want to talk about here?
No, not really. It'll just reduce how many of these random fake customers we have running because someone accidentally created it.
Right. The next one, we performed DR tests. So Mike and Scott and I went through and performed a DR test for Mongo and Rabbit, and we're feeling pretty good about that. The only other service we need to really sort of DR test is Kubernetes, like our clusters, to make sure that we're able to create a new cluster relatively quickly in the event that everything explodes. We'll see. Anything else? Nope. Thoughts? Cool. The last one, services are synced between environments. So I know Mike did a lot of work with that over the week.
Yeah, I went through last night and got Prometheus up and running on stable, as well as KubeCost and a couple of other things. So
Yeah,
still ironing out a couple of small things, but all the main stuff is there. So if you see anything weird, like, I don't know, a whole Prometheus deployment missing, just let me know.
Yeah.
That was weird.
No, that's great. Super excited. We'll have to let KubeCost run for a little bit and then see what it says and try to scale down or properly scale things on stable. KubeCost doesn't really give us too much on edge, right? Because we're not really running that much stuff. But I feel like we'll have a lot more interesting things to look at on stable. So
well, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting to see how it divvies up, CPU and memory costs, right, among different services, which is always a challenge.
And we can also adjust the requests and the limits for all of our services.
Yep.
Because KubeCost gives you suggestions on that as well, which is really cool. I guess the only other thing to talk about is this red bit here on how clear and defined were the objectives. No pressure. but does anybody want to speak to that?
Yeah, that's probably me. Part of it is that like I just don't write as highly as other people. Apparently, I just have a lower scale. But also part of it's because I like don't have any clear objectives right now.
Yeah. Well, what sort of objectives would you like? I know. I mean, I know like sort of your next big task is going to be those developer profiles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we have a meeting to sort of discuss what Scott is thinking about that. So hopefully you should come out of that with some good objectives and like a clear understanding of where we're going with it.
Yeah, that would help for sure. That's the sort of thing. I'm stuck in the spot where like we need a couple of back end adjustments to get finished before I can do some work on the stuff we currently have, and like
Right.
a clear definition for what the next big thing we're working on is. And so I'm sort of like trying some stuff and casting about for things to do right now.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's not necessarily that like the objectives aren't clear and defined. It's more like we're just in this weird place with this weird middle place with Nick's objectives and work where it's hard to really know what to work on as you're wrapping up like one project and before we start another.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. I mean, I think it's fair, and yeah. Hopefully these meetings help.
Presumably, it's all going to come together all at once, and then I'll have like 10,000 different things to do. So.
Yeah, I hear that. It sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think that's everybody. Cool. Well, is there anything else that we want to talk about here, or anything we didn't get to touch on at all during this retro that we think would be helpful?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody can help with this, but I was wondering why there are so many evicted pods on stable for a lot of these data science jobs that have been running.
Oh, yeah, we'd probably have to talk to John about that.
Okay.
I know we've been playing with the life cycle of our pods though, so evicted is probably not what we expect to be seeing. So there's that, but maybe we can figure it out with John. All right, well, thanks everybody. Good retro and good discussion, and I guess we'll talk again later for planning after the prioritization meeting.
Alrighty.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
See you guys.